For me, it meant like college. I kind of just agreed to do a major that I had no idea about. And I mean, it's cool now because I understand politics a little bit better, but I didn't need to do that. I could have chosen a completely different major and still been able to get into law school.
Hi, Standouts. This is Yolanda, and in today's episode, I am exploring the career path of Heidy Vaquerano, who is an entertainment attorney here in Los Angeles, and she is also the managing director of Girls in Tech LA. We explore her non-traditional path to becoming an attorney, which was very fascinating to me. She was very clear at a very young age that she wanted to be an attorney, but the way that she got there is a little bit different than the way that I perceived that people approach law school. So I think you'll really enjoy that. We also discussed how she got involved in Girls in Tech LA and the tech scene in general in Los Angeles, which I think will be very important for anyone who is looking to make a industry or career change, because she explains how she got into it. So I think that'll be very valuable for you guys. For links to the things that we discuss in this episode, go to nts.today/8. And now let's start the show.
My name is Heidy Vaquerano. I have a law firm called Vaquerano Law, and it's myself and my associate. I'm also the managing director of Girls in Tech, the Los Angeles chapter. And Girls in Tech is a global nonprofit organization that educates, engages, and empowers women in technology.
So we are going to step back a lot, not to birth, but I want to learn a little bit about you. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Orange County in a small town called Cypress from immigrant parents. I am the first generation to go to college. So I definitely had, I don't even know if I knew it was pressure, but I definitely had a mom behind me that was like, you need to do well in school. You need to pick a career, not a job. And so early on, I just had that instilled in me. And I was probably the easiest child growing up. I loved school. I was the epitome of a nerd. I would love to get to school early. I befriended all the teachers. And it was just, I never had a problem with reading or writing or wanting to do homework. I was always looking for more.
So how did your family end up in Cyprus?
So my family's from Central America, from Guatemala, and they came here in the mid-1970s.
Okay.
I have an older brother who was 8, and he was born in Guatemala as well. So when my parents came, and they lived in a small town called Buena Park, which is where Knott's Berry Farm is. So that's close to where Cypress is.
Okay. Do you do the not scary farm and all of that? Is it scary?
No, I do not like people coming around the corner and like trying to scare me. That does not count. And I'm also not going to pay for that. I'm like, I already live in a scary enough world.
Okay. So you have a brother who... He's 8 years older than you?
Me, yeah.
Okay, so how was that growing up? Did you feel like an only child?
That is literally why I'm a lawyer. I grew up, when we were first in Buena Park, we shared a room, and he literally put a piece of tape in the middle of the room, like Brady Bunch style, and told me I could not pass there. So I somehow decided that the closet, which the tape didn't run through, was neutral territory. I went through there to get out. So I feel like I've always been negotiating for my life.
That is so funny.
I owe a lot of credit to him. I always felt like I needed to negotiate something with my brother. When he would babysit me, it would be like, okay, you do this. And I'm like, but if I do that, then I get this. So I felt like that was definitely where my skills came from.
Where did that come from in you?
I don't know. I feel like early on, I was like, I know he's getting something out of this, and I should too.
You're not the only one.
Yeah, I was like, no, I see your game.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even know if I described it that way when I was younger, but I'm like, but I should get something too. So.
Very cool. Okay, so you're in Cyprus. How was high school for you?
Amazing.
Why was it
well,
amazing?
Now I look back and I think it's amazing. Well, so prior to that, I had been in a public school. And in third grade, my teacher had told my mom that she needed to take me out of there. She was smart, and it just wasn't challenging for me. And when things weren't challenging for me, I would just talk to the person next to me. I would literally do their homework, and because it's I'll help you, and then I would end up doing it. So from that moment on, my mom took me out of public school and put me into a private Catholic school.
Were you excited about the change, or was there
I was sad and mad and very bratty about it, because I was losing all my friends. It was a whole new world of uniforms, of things I didn't know, of going to church once a week as part of your school. I didn't mind that part because we grew up very religious, but it was just completely different. And it wasn't until I made some friends that I felt more at home. And but I've always been a very person who challenges things. So I know one of the nuns it's not like she didn't like me, but I would always question her. So again, it was always something like that in me that I'm no, I don't think that's correct. In 6th grade, you would have 6A in regular 6th grade, and we sat in different benches at lunch, and you weren't allowed to talk to the other bench.
Why?
But I have no idea. It was just the lunch ladies.
What was how were the groups determined?
I think it was just based on your last name, I guess.
Okay.
But I had friends
you
in the other
talk.
Well, it was just the lunch table. So there would be so imagine this is this is a lunch table. You're on the other side. I could talk to you if we were in the same grade, but if I turned around and talked to this person, I would get in trouble. And I remember that they sent me to the principal's office, and I was there is less space between me and the person behind me than there is between me and the person there. And they just called my mom immediately and were you need to come talk to your daughter. And I never got detention for doing something crazy, but it was that sort of stuff.
Okay, so this Catholic school, what grades did it go? How long did you go there?
So when we moved back to Cyprus, I went to there from 6th grade through 8th grade, and then I went to an all-girls Catholic high school in Fullerton called Rosary.
Okay. And was this the natural progression of most girls that went to your school, or why was that the school?
There's a couple different schools you could go to. A lot of my friends at that time were going there, and it was mostly based off of that because we would all carpool.
Okay.
One parent would take us in the morning, one parent would pick us up in the afternoon because it was pretty far. It was at least a 45-minute drive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had this community thing to make sure that you all got there.
Exactly, yeah.
So did that affect your ability to do extracurricular activities?
Actually, no, we were all nerds, and now I look back and I'm I don't know how I did that, but I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, get to school by 7 to take journalism class, and my friends and I were we wrote for the newspaper, and then we could stay after school and take 7th period and take a different science class or an art class, and we would do that, and then our parents would pick us up.
So what was one of your favorite courses or activities that you did in high school?
I loved French class.
Okay.
It was my first time exploring a different language. I speak Spanish, and it was the first time that I got to say no, I want to take a different language. And I ended up instead of doing the normal having a quinceañera, my mom's always been very explore the world, take your time, enjoy what you have. And I got to go my sophomore year to France as part of a school trip.
Oh, wow. Oh, so your school was really?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Cool.
I mean, it was one of the things that it's keep my eye on the prize. I'm a good kid. I get good grades. My mom and my parents will pay for this opportunity. And it was the best thing I'd ever done.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, my biggest trip in high school, I went to DC. I think it was middle school. I went to DC, or that may have been my 10th grade year. And then my 9th grade year, we went to Atlanta. That was as far as we went. And both of those places, you could take a bus because they were close enough, because I grew up in North Carolina. So both of those were like 5-hour drives. So it was not, I did not go anywhere where I needed a passport.
No. Growing up in Orange County, our school trips were either you could go do that, or like our regular field trips were Disneyland. So we were very lucky to.
Yeah. Okay. So you have to tell me about this French trip.
I know. It's spring break. So I think it was 10 days, and it was a group of like 10 girls and our French teacher, and we just toured Paris, and it was amazing. I had never been outside of Cyprus. So it was the coolest thing I'd ever done, and it just really instilled in me that the love of travel, the love for the French language, and I continued that through college and ended up getting a minor in French too.
Okay. Is there something that you remember about the experience in France that still sticks with you now?
Probably not as much that trip because it was so long ago, but when I later spent the semester at the Sorbonne in college, that was definitely...
Okay, note to self. We have to talk about that when we get to college.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are... when you were in high school, what were your career thoughts, or what did you think you wanted to do with your life?
So like I said, I had a mom right behind me saying, pick a career, keep your grades up. I do remember I've always wanted to be a lawyer.
Why?
I think because it was one of the like more common careers that if like you have like an immigrant parent, they're like, well, be a teacher, be a lawyer, be a doctor. And I'm just like, I like cry too much. So it was one of those. I remember telling my mom at one point, because I really love cooking, that I wanted to be a chef. And she was like, no, try again. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so now we laugh about it. I'm very like inquisitive. Like even now in my career, I do a lot of different things under the umbrella of being a lawyer. So I feel like I would have explored things anyways. But in college, in high school, I definitely knew that my career path was to be a lawyer. So we had career counselors who were giving us advice towards that. My junior year, I did a law camp at Stanford. It was amazing. But
what do you do at a law camp?
It was basically like mock trial.
Okay.
I was also part of the mock trial team at school. And the one thing I don't like is public speaking or litigation or trial work. It's just like too nerve-wracking for me. I don't have that personality. I'm better one-on-one and kind of like recognizing the needs of a party that way versus trial. The law camp was more of a traditional, we were working on a case. We went to trial. We had to do opening statements and stuff in front of a judge. And I was more of like the legal researcher in the background because I just did not like that sort of thing. I was lucky that I knew that there was other things I could do within the legal world that weren't necessarily trial work.
Ooh, something that you said that I wanted to ask about. When you told your mom that you were thinking about being a chef and she was like, no, why was she like, no?
She didn't, I'm sure she doesn't think it's like a traditional career path, or she didn't see it as something that was going to lead me to stability.
Okay. So you graduated high school and you went straight to college at USC?
Yes, exactly.
And why did you pick USC?
Funny story, I had applied to Stanford, Berkeley, and USC. And I remember the career counselor telling me that maybe you should apply to a state school as a fallback. And I was like... This
is your guidance counselor at your school?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I reported her. I was like, nope, you will not mess with me. Yeah, so I was like, no. Like, have you met my mom? That's not happening. Because I think the one that she's... No hate on UCSD, but I think, like, I was like, I deserve to go to these schools. I had really high SAT scores. I had a 4.3, and I spoke 3 different languages. I'm like, I think I can go to one of these colleges. I had that traditional path that was meant to go to one of these schools. I did a lot of work on my essays. At that point, I had my first kind of real job, which was working at the church rectory. And I befriended one of the women there who would help me with my school essays. And it was a really great opportunity to kind of hone in on my writing skills. I just told the counselor no, and I ended up getting into USC and Berkeley. And with USC, with the combination of grants and scholarships, it was pretty much a full ride.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because that was my next question. Like how that's like a huge thing, especially with you going to law school, which I don't know if you got grants for that. But I think most of the time you don't get money for law school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the worst move to find out. Yeah. And at that point, my father had passed away my sophomore year of high school. So I also had wanted to stay close to home. So it was definitely a much easier choice at that point.
Was your father's death unexpected or was he sick?
Yeah, he died of a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How did that affect life before and after him? Because your brother is 8 years older, so I'm assuming that is he still around?
Yeah, he was. We all still lived together, and it was a pretty scary, sad story how we found out. But at that point, we became a really strong family unit, and I knew that I didn't want to leave. It really affected my mom because she had lost her father, and so she did not want us to go through the same.
Did she lose her father at a young age as well? Okay.
Yeah, so she kind of took it upon herself to like take on all that grief, and it was really hard. So
did you see her doing that?
Yeah, it was really hard for a couple years, so I knew it wasn't worth me going away. But again, fortuitously, I feel like USC was a great experience.
Yeah.
And it was close. I've always lived close to home. Like right now, I still live in LA, and Orange County is about a 45-minute drive, so it's not bad if you're lucky.
Yeah. Okay. On Sunday at 2 a.m., it's 45 minutes. Okay. Oh, wow. So you go to USC, and did you immediately declare political science and government as your major?
According to that guidance counselor, political science is the most likely major to get you into law school. I had no idea what it meant, what it was. It was like, all right, I'll do what she says. About 2 years in, I discovered that that was not necessary.
How did you discover that?
I met my former boss at an LSAT prep event, and she was wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and had bright red hair and cursed through the entire panel. And I was like, I want to do what she does. And it was the first time I had heard of music law. So I went up to her, I waited, and I'm like, do you need an intern? And she gave me her card, and I went to interview a couple weeks later. And my dream had been to have a record label, get a JD and an MBA, and run the Saddle Creek of the West, which was a record label that I loved all the artists, and I loved their community. And so I wanted to recreate that with my friends over on the West Coast.
So what was it about Saddle Creek that...
It was pretty much like indie emo rock, and that's saying a lot about me. But I loved that it was all run by friends, and they all worked with each other. They were like kind of rotated in each other's bands, took each other on tour. So I love that ethos behind it.
So were you musically...
No, not a single instrument.
You like listening to other people, but...
Not unless you count karaoke.
Karaoke is hard.
Oh, it's fun though.
Okay, so you were knew that you wanted to do music law, so you were able to get connected with this lady that seemed like unconventional.
Yes,
an unconventional lawyer. Why do you think that you were able to? Well, she chose you. Did she interview multiple people, or what do you think it was about you?
I think they did. At that point, I was about a year and a half in, right? And so
Is that early for people to start taking LSAT classes?
Right.
And
yeah, but again, remember I have a mom sitting right behind me. She's like, what are you doing? Why are you wasting? I'm like, I'm actually in school. Like, I tried to go home one summer and take the summer off. And she was like, funny, go get a job. Like, literally was like, worked at a small Jewish bakery in my town. And she wouldn't even drive me to work. I had to walk there.
What do you think was the driving force behind your mom being like super, like, not pushing, but like good pushing, but just like always kind of like...
I will say that it sounds like pushing, but now as I look back, I had a supportive backing all the time. My mom would, like, if I was there at 0 period, she'd figure out for me how to be there. If I was going to be at 7th period, she'd wait in the parking lot until I was done. She would carry my backpack. She would, even when I took the bar, she came with me. And she would have my snacks ready, have my flashcards ready. I just felt like I always had an angel behind me.
Yeah. Oh,
and it's hard because...
Awesome. You are interning. Was she in music law?
Yeah. So the firm had started off doing strictly music law.
What does that involve?
So it's representing... So it's a transactional entertainment boutique law firm. So transactional means we don't do any of the litigation work, no trial work or anything like that. We're strictly negotiating and dealing with contracts all day long. Okay. So she had just opened her law firm and had come over with the estate of Tupac Shakur. And it was her and 2 other, I guess they weren't attorneys at that time. They had been out of law school. And they both had taken the February bar. And the girl who had interviewed me didn't pass that bar. So she had to go and take time off to study because you can only take it in February and I think it's July of each year. So she had to take time off. So I had to study. It literally takes like 2 months to study.
February and July, why wouldn't they do like February and then like sometime in the fall?
I think because if you take it in February, you find out in April. Okay. So then you have another chance to take it again. And then if you take it, I forget if it's June or July. If you take it that time period, you hear literally right before Thanksgiving. So then you have another time period to study.
Okay.
It takes a long time to get results.
What percentage pass it the first time?
Not a lot. It's very hard. Yeah. And recently when I took it, it was a 3-day bar exam, which is one of the hardest. And recently they changed it to 2 days, I believe. It just started. But it's extremely difficult. There's a median range you have to get in order to be considered to pass. So if you pass, you never find out like how well you did. You only
just know you
passed. You're just like, my name is on the thing. I'm out of here. I pass. Yeah. If you don't pass, then you find out your scores in the separate components.
So then you know what you really need to focus
on. Exactly. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's good because then you don't have people like holding over your head like, oh, well, I did really well. Right. Exactly. Because it doesn't matter. Like, and literally, you freaking passed the exam.
Yeah. Okay. And that's why I just am not the type of person who is like, oh, I went to a top 5 law school or I went to this. I didn't. I ended up actually taking the most untraditional route that I never thought I would, which was I stayed working full time and I went to school at night.
Whoa.
And I ended up going to Southwestern Law School here because it had a really strong emphasis on entertainment. And I looked at a lot of the professors and they were the people who I was working with in the daytime. And I knew there was no better way to bridge those relationships, to learn, to ask questions that you traditionally don't get taught until you're out of law school and working at a law firm.
I have one friend now who is working. She teaches during the day and she's at law school in the evening. But that just seems really hard.
It was. I think I just closed my eyes and was like, it's getting done. And I was having so much fun in the daytime working. Like, I mean, when I first started, I was going to take a year off after I graduated from college. And I started to, and my boss went through like a series of like new attorneys and she just could not get along with. And I was like, oh, I'll do it. Like, let me have a chance. And she was like, you know how to do this. Like, please go to law school. Stop wasting your time. We need to get you in so that I can start training you. Each step of the way, I made myself more valuable to her so that I could keep learning and in a very untraditional way, because there's nobody who gets that close to somebody and is taught like the tools of the trade along with getting to draft that early on into their law school career.
Yeah. So you were like, when you graduated law school, you were probably miles ahead of people because you were like working, doing the actual work.
Yeah, I hit the ground running immediately, was able to start getting my own clients, which was mostly saying that it was like my boss liked one genre of music which was more pop and like 80s hair metal, I think, or it's just not my thing. And I loved, again, like indie rock, and that was my thing for a couple of years, especially out of law school.
So why were you thinking about taking a year off?
I'd never taken any time off. I didn't know what that meant. And I did take some time off, probably just like that summer, and then took the LSAT and went back to school immediately in 2005.
Okay. And so when you were thinking about taking a year off, what did you think you would do with that year?
I was going to continue exploring the idea of having the record label. So I had started a record label my junior year of college because I told my boss like what my dream was, and she was like, just do it now. You don't need an MBA. These people who run these places don't even know what they're doing, so you can do it too. I mean, in her own way, she's very supportive too. Yeah. And she was like, we'll just handle the paperwork for you here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, awesome. So it was me and a couple other friends who were more on the music side. They were producers, and they had been in the USC program, and they were required to do certain hours of work, like either in the studio or engineering and stuff like that. So between like the five of us, we just created this label called Television Records. And
where did that name come from?
I think, oh my God, I don't even remember anymore, but I think it was from, there was a band called Television. Okay. And I think it was a lot more like the guys in that picture, but I was like down for the ride.
Having the record label, did you have acts or musicians?
Yes. So I was doing more of the business legal side. I had another friend who was more of the like marketing guru. And then my friend who is a producer, and I had a couple other friends who were already in bands. So out of that, we decided to take those bands and create a compilation. Our first compilation album was 5 bands of our friends. And we ended up having our album release party at the Elliott Smith Memorial.
What is that?
And Silver Lake. It's where the wall is.
What wall?
So it's an album that Elliott Smith did. And so he committed suicide. It is the album that Elliott Smith had, and there was a memorial to him in Silver Lake that was like a space, a music space.
Before he committed suicide?
No,
or
afterwards.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty famous. It doesn't exist anymore, but back then it was like a famous like stop in the Silver Lake East Side area of LA. Because a lot of emerging acts were coming from that side of town. And for $5, you could get a red Solo cup. And we had kegs in the back, and you got a copy of our compilation album, which were all handmade. We had our friends come over for a weekend and spray painted them, and then used a logo of a television that was like a cutout, spray painted that on, and then we used the old label makers to make the tag on the name on it. So it's very DIY, like the epitome of that. And so,
but still to see it go from like, we're creating this label, and then we come up with this idea to bring all of these groups together to create a compilation album, and then even, do you still have one of the?
Yeah, I do. You do? Yeah, and our first like promo thing. Back then when my first job at the law firm had been listening to demos that people would send in because I had been the first rise of labels weren't taking any more unsolicited submissions because of potential lawsuits and sample claims. So if you didn't have a manager, you would try to get a lawyer to represent you and shop your album around. Okay. So that was my first job.
How was that?
Hilarious. I listened to a lot of music. I don't think we ever really took anything on, but I would write the response letters to each and every one. So that was just like a good experience, and listening to music, seeing what packaging was like, materials. Noticing those things helped me later on.
Okay. How did it help you later on?
So when I passed the bar, I took on a couple acts that were indies that had managers or didn't have managers, and we were looking to get them signed. So early on, I worked really heavy with a band that we ended up taking from like zero to becoming like a platinum record selling artist. So I worked very closely with management. I knew a lot more of the detail side that you wouldn't if you were just an attorney.
The acts that you did represent, were those referral, or did you seek them out, or how did that happen?
The first iteration of clients that were mine, I was referred through a friend. I had just finished law school and they were looking for a lawyer. So I had a call with the manager and the band kind of like leader. And then that turned into working more closely with that manager. And I ended up working with them very closely with their other acts too. From that, one person would refer me to another one and then another one. And then at the same time, I'm still working on artists from the law firm side. So I'm still working on the state of Tupac Shakur, working on huge clients. That was my boss's thing. Like her goal was to really build her list of A-list clientele.
Walk me through what your life looked like working there and going to law school, because that's still
so I would start work at 9:30, leave at 5 to get into school by 6 p.m. was my first class. And then you would have, I think it's 2 classes per night. You go from 6 to 10. And then occasionally I would take a Friday off. But the way that I had done my schedule was that I took actually Saturday morning classes, which were more of the electives, which I loved anyways because they were the non-traditional. I wasn't in it to take wills and trusts. So it worked out better for me. Like if I would leave at 5 and I didn't have class that night, I would use it to do homework. I loved it. It was really fun for me. There's nothing more peaceful for me than sitting down at a computer and like tearing an agreement apart and redlining it. That was definitely fun. It was just tough for sure, like making sure that I invested the same amount of time and zest in school as I did in the daytime. But once you get past, I guess, your first year, you can start taking more of your electives and more of the entertainment classes. So it was a lot easier to be like, oh, I'm doing a publishing agreement in the daytime, or I'm working on this co-pub agreement, and I would go to school and learn more about that. So it worked out very well. I knew going into law school that I wanted law school to work for me, not me to work for law school. Yeah.
What does that mean?
For me, it meant like college. I kind of just agreed to do a major that I had no idea about. And I mean, it's cool now because I understand politics a little bit better, but I didn't need to do that. I could have chosen a completely different major and still been able to get into law school.
So you graduate law school and then you have a lot of free time because you're no longer...
Oh, I wish. No. I graduated December 2008, finished my finals like mid-December, I believe, and then immediately went into studying for the February 2009 bar. So it was the first time I had left that firm, my boss, for that long. And So you went full-time study? Oh, yeah. There's no other way. I know other people are able to do it. I just needed to bite the bullet, take the time off, and study my ass off. I would run in the morning. I would do a 3-mile run because I heard that after like an hour or more, a little bit more after you exercise, your brain is the most absorbent. So I would do that and immediately work on multiple choice, because that was, I knew, going to be like the hardest part for me. Writing, I think I can do very well, and I knew how to kind of like pick those issues, but the multiple choice really tests you on like the nuances and like the minutia of law.
And I'm assuming that working full time and going into law school helped you to graduate with not as much debt, or at all?
No.
It didn't?
No, it's still expensive to go to law school, and there's not like a lot of grants or scholarships per se, and I believe probably even less for night school because it's not the traditional route. And at that point I was lucky enough to be going to have a job and to go to law school, that was on me, and that was something I decided to take on myself.
Yeah. So you take the exam. Did you have the confidence once you finished that you thought that you had passed?
I had my power outfit that I wore.
And what is this power outfit?
It was these Coach boots and jeans and like a sweatshirt that was very comfortable because, as you know, all test rooms are cold. And so I had already like decided, and I think before even knowing what like manifestation was, I had been doing that kind of work with myself. I'm like, when I walk into the room, I'm going to answer these essay questions. I know as much as I need to know to pass. So, because again, you're taught in these programs, it's like, you don't need to ace it. You just need to get enough to pass.
Yeah. So you take it in February, and then you find out in April or May that you passed. Okay. What did you do once you passed?
It was so funny that day. I went back to work immediately after the bar.
Do you get like an email, or was it something in the mail?
You have a number that you visit the state bar website that you type in, and if your name appears, you've passed. If it doesn't, you haven't. And at that point, I lived with a roommate, and she was also studying, so it was very nerve-wracking. I decided to check at work with my boss and my mom on speakerphone. And luckily I passed. Like, both of these women will probably kill me. But no, it was very lucky. And I had a friend who came over and was there with me, and we popped a bottle of champagne. So
very cool. Okay, so now you passed. You are certified as a lawyer, and you remained at LaPointe. So how did your work change once you became like officially a lawyer, or did it?
The only thing that really changed was I was able to go and get my own clients and really concentrate on building that aspect of my practice. I still was her right-hand person and dealing with like the admin and dealing with the top clients at our law firm. So that didn't change. It's just I added more.
So how did you go about getting clients?
Early on, I was young and would go to shows late at night and stick around. And if I liked a band, I would approach them and talk to them. Especially where I was looking for bands, it's a much smaller community, and I had been around in that area, so people knew who I was and what I was working on. And the law firm at that point was also building its reputation, so it was known to be a good law firm.
What types of skills or things does it take to be a good entertainment attorney?
So again, you could be a transactional or litigation entertainment attorney. So I was a transactional attorney, and within entertainment, you have music or you have film and TV. And some people do one or the other, and very unique that I do both. And I think that the reason, again, I had always been really inquisitive, and while I had started to learn music so early on into my career, I was eager to learn something new. And one of the clients that I got early on, I was brought on board to help her do her first comedy music album, but she was also a famous actress. So she eventually moved her TV and film work over to our firm, and that's where I started to learn work. And I had taken film and TV classes in law school in preparation for that.
Okay, so you knew that you wanted to do both.
Yes.
What are the things that are similar and different being a TV lawyer and a music lawyer?
So music is very much driven by the Copyright Act, and you have to kind of know the nuances of the difference between a master recording and a music composition, and what a musical composition is composed of the melody and the lyrics. And then in film and TV, it's a completely different game where you're working with executive producer agreements or producer agreements, or you're doing life rights agreements. So it's different copyright issues. But I believe music, in my opinion, is more nuanced with the Copyright Act, and specifically like mechanical royalties and things that you'll see some film and TV lawyers won't know how to clear music because they're like, I just don't do that. That's like a music thing.
How do you keep knowledgeable?
What you do keep up with now that you have to do is to understand digital and streaming record royalties, understanding what that means in record deals and publishing deals. So that's the side that you have to keep up with a lot more now.
Like when you're looking at agreements, do you find that a lot of people just don't know that stuff and you're having to educate them, or are you finding that people are just trying to see what they can get?
It could
get
be
over.
both, yeah. And it definitely, our industry is run by your leverage. So in some cases, my job is spent a lot more educating clients and understanding, hey, this is what you're signing. I got lucky that I was taught to be a deal maker, not a deal breaker.
What's the difference between those two?
So in my opinion, a deal maker will take a look at the agreement as a whole and look at the clauses that will make a difference in your pocket or in your career. So if you're signing a record deal, our goal is to try and get the label to try and commit to a certain amount of record albums. A deal breaker would go look at the choice of law and complain about that provision when it's like, well, is it really going to matter if my album is shelved and I never go anywhere?
How did you learn to be more of a deal maker?
Well, like I said, my boss was very much my mentor, and the way that she sort of taught me was I was involved in all her phone calls with anybody who she was negotiating with. She would call me in and she'd deal with it, go through all the deal points. I would take notes and then I'd go back and draft it and then take it back to her. So I feel like, I don't know if that happens very often. I know that people who work at corporate law firms have a way different training than that, but I think that taught me well how to focus on the deal points that matter, how to listen to the other person's needs and find the common ground.
You stay at LaPointe and then you started your own firm. What made you decide to do that, and how was that process? Because you were with for a long time,
for 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I will say that I had never planned to have my own law firm. I never planned to be an entrepreneur. I had achieved what my mom had wanted, which was to go to college, go to law school, get a career, and I did that. Now, as I kind of look back, I understand myself more and my personality. I need to either be intellectually stimulated or there has to be some form of social good to what I'm doing. As you can tell, entertainment is a very fickle world, and not to say this in a manner to like demean other people who do it, but I just couldn't spend my time making rich people richer. I definitely felt that my sort of skill set was kind of developing acts at that point, and because I had built a stable of my own clients, they were on the rise, and I needed time to develop my personal style on my own. Working at that law firm, because I had been there for so long, people counted on me for everything, or just would ask me questions like, what kind of coffee do we need to order? And I'm like, that's... So I knew that at some point in my life, I needed to draw the line where I was just Heidy Vaquerano versus Heidy Vaquerano from LaPointe Law. And that was a big thing for me. I needed to develop my own style, and I decided in April 2013, I had just come back from a group trip with my friends. And
where'd you go?
Ireland.
Oh.
Yeah. We had won a Groupon contest called Grouponicus.
What?
Yeah. Which was hilarious. And we took this trip to Ireland for like a week and a half, and it was all I could think about. And I knew in my heart that it was the best way for me to continue growing. And most people have a 5-year plan or have a knowledge of where they're going to go. But I had come back, and because I had gone from being at South by Southwest and going into the trip, a lot of my work had been passed on to the other associates. So it was an easier time to say, I need some time. So, and I ended up working out of my friend's loft, who I went to college with.
So you said that you wanted to discover who you were, and then you wanted also to do more social good. What did that mean to you at that time?
So when I left, I definitely wanted to develop my own style. I was very cognizant that someone else's name is on the door, and I didn't want to risk that. And I felt like the only way to do that was to go out on my own. That was the first step into kind of realizing that for me, becoming a whole as a lawyer, like now I can start a job. I can represent people from top to bottom. I'm bringing in my own clients. I've been very lucky that I've never had to do any like traditional marketing or PR. Like it's really just word of mouth and colleagues and clients referring people to me. So very grateful for that. And then as I've continued to move more into the tech space, that's when I found Girls in Tech and some of the Latinos in Tech organizations that I've been helping out with.
How did you find them?
So that's actually more recent, especially since I spent all of September working on 3 different hackathons. I think that what I really see as my skill is helping bring together people and organizing programming and events to help educate and empower people of color in technology, which is something that I didn't get to do in entertainment. I had gotten that job so early on, and once you get into entertainment, you're in, and you fight every day to stay in. So I never did any networking from that sense. Now I kind of look back and I'm like, oh, I wonder if there were any Latino organizations or Blacks in entertainment. Like I just didn't see any. It had these blinders on. So now I feel like my eyes are opening to that, and I really love that aspect. I think that I've discovered more and more that that's what completes my sort of needs. So it's been great to work in 3 separate occasions with 3 different sets of people to put together events and see the outcomes, which are amazing, and to see that what kind of difference you can bring.
So what were those 3 events that you did recently?
So the first one that I did was the Undocumedia hackathon called UndocuHacks. And that was the first undocumented immigrant youth-led hackathon in the U.S. And it's put on by this organization, Undocumedia, which is a nonprofit immigrant rights organization. And we worked with Forward US, with the USC Dreams Resource Center, and a couple other organizations to put together a 24-hour hackathon. They were broken up into different teams, and their call for action, or their project that they were working on, was the intersection of immigration, crime, and health.
Okay. So that was one.
That's one, yeah.
What was the second?
So about less than a week later, Girls in Tech, which is the organization that I'm the managing director for, the LA chapter, we had our Hack for Humanity hackathon, and that is a global project that we're doing, and it is tackling global challenges facing women in technology. And so we teamed up with 4 separate nonprofit organizations in LA, and our call for action was each organization would come and talk a little bit about themselves, what it was they were facing, whether it was infrastructure. Well, my favorite one was the Raw Science Foundation. They have a potato mesh Wi-Fi system in a third world country. And so they wanted the participants.
Like eating potato?
Yeah, you can make this system. Don't ask me what that's the one thing that I don't, but it's made out of potato mesh.
Okay.
As you can tell, it's like a different speed of Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So they wanted the participants to create a billing system that would run on this potato mesh Wi-Fi.
I have so many questions about the potato mesh. Yeah. I'm going to have to research. I'm like, how does someone even discover that?
Well, yeah, they do a lot of work. I think she does work with Purdue University. And so her students usually go out and they build that system. And so we brought them into the hackathon because it was like such a great example of things that we could help work on in like a hackathon environment.
Okay, so how did you, before we go on to the third thing that you recently did, how did you become the managing director of Girls in Tech?
So I give a lot of credit to the board. I started to volunteer last summer, and they had their first event at Snapchat, which was like sold out.
I think I tried to go to it, and that was too late.
So I was like, oh, that's like a great opportunity. And they ended up sending out a survey and like, hey, if you want to volunteer, we're going to be meeting a couple weeks from now. And I'm like, oh, why not? This is like a good way to dive deeper into the tech space. And again, that was like one of the first things that I felt very imposter syndrome core. Like I'd come from entertainment, a whole different world. Yeah. And I was thinking, I'm like, how am I going to mesh these two worlds? How like, do I start all over with relationships? Where am I going to fit in?
So you started volunteering at Girls in Tech. So how did that go from volunteering to like, hey, you're the managing director?
We had our first event, which was So we were in the process of relaunching. We had our first event post Snapchat at a co-working day.
I went there.
Yeah, a co-working.
Because I live near there.
Oh, no way. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So that was my first kind of segue into planning and working with the team. And I was assigned helping find food. And I reached out to a woman who had been at a panel that I had done at Silicon Beach Fest. And so that's like kind of like entertainment and tech. And I was like, well, that's somebody I know. And she had a food startup. It was like all healthy food delivery.
Yeah, the food was good.
Yeah. And so I'm like, and it worked. Like literally my first email out worked. And I was like, well, that's a sign.
Yeah.
So I felt like, all right, I'm making progress. And so that was a really great way to see that come together and have, I've always been a nerd and I love like organizing things and making people happy and creating things that like make their life easier. So after that, I talked to the board, and the managing director at that time was looking for someone to help her. So I started off as the co-managing director and then came on board because she also has her own business. So she was overwhelmed with a little of that stuff. So I came on board to do a lot more this probably like spring or so.
Okay. So what does a managing director at Girls in Tech do?
So we're the lead for our chapters, and we do a lot of communication with our headquarters in San Francisco. We're in charge of like seeing our programming through. So for example, we had Hack for Humanity, which each of our chapters is doing. So we're in charge of doing the phone calls, doing the main organizing, being the liaison with headquarters and any of our partners.
And so is Girls in Tech, is it for... Like, it's not for young girls.
No.
What is the mission of Girls in Tech?
It's to educate, engage, and empower women in technology.
Okay.
When it started 10 years ago, and the founder, I've read from like our chapter documents that she wanted to use the name Girls in Tech to keep kind of like the lively girl in us in that name. I know now that people kind of frown upon that and like prefer women to be called women. But I really do feel that our organization definitely still encompasses those professional fields and needs that women need.
Okay. You did the hackathon, Hack for Humanity?
Yes.
Okay. And then there was a third one that you did.
So before in entertainment, I would go to parties or mixers or whatever, and it was very like cliquey, like people are amongst themselves. And when I would go to tech conferences, I would walk in and immediately make a new friend because everyone like wants to collaborate. So I felt safe, I would say. And I had joined these two Latinos in tech organizations called Tequeria and Tectinos. And Tequeria is a meetup group, and they have like pretty much like monthly or every other month events at different startups as well. So it's kind of like what we do for Girls in Tech, but for Latinos in tech. And they had been brought on board by the Caper Center to help with Startup Weekend Latinx, which was going to be a 5-city effort.
Okay.
And so it was going to be LA, Oakland, Miami, Chicago, and New York.
Okay.
But due to the hurricane, Miami postponed until later this month. So Startup Weekend is a Techstars branded event. And it's 54 hours that you spend working on a completely new project with a team. And so you're kind of honing in your skills, whether you're an engineer, UX, or sales, or social media. Like, they build the teams there. You get to pitch on the first night. You have 1 minute to pitch your idea, and then people get to vote on what should be the top X amount of teams, projects.
So you're like being involved in all of these organizations, but then also you have your law firm.
Right.
So how are you managing them? Your work being in law school and working in law, I'm sure, has served you well.
Right. I'm very lucky that I hired my associate this past summer. So a lot of work that I started to train in on the easier type things and being able to hand that off to him, take a quick peek, make sure everything's covered, and then able to send it out. But you have to, these are all volunteer jobs. So I have to keep up with my regular work. I took phone calls during all of them. Especially our Girls in Tech one was on a Thursday and Friday. So it's time. You can put an out of office, but if your client needs you, you have to be there. And luckily the nature of hackathons is there is some downtime. So it wasn't too bad, but it is, a lot of work where you're answering a ton of questions in the organization and being in charge of something. And also my regular job is problem solving all day long. So it did get overwhelming. I probably will never do that again, but they were 3 very unique experiences that have showed me what I'm good at, what I love about tech, and how I want to move forward.
So what are the answers to those?
I definitely need something to have a social good component to it, something that gives back, and I need to be intellectually stimulated.
Okay. What were the sequence of events that made you realize you needed to hire an associate?
Actually, I would say that it was serendipitous. He had started working with me earlier in January, and I had taken on some new clients who were working on these PSAs, animated PSAs, due to the election. And so he came on board referred by a client. He's like the best friend of one of my clients. And he had just graduated Loyola and was studying for the bar. So I brought him in, taught him how to do kind of like the basic work, and he worked out really well and decided to stay on board for a couple days a week. Then he passed the bar in April and was like, oh my gosh, it's April.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I'm going to make this official. And I decided to take all the necessary steps to get us on payroll, get workers' comp, do all the things that you need to do as a business owner that when you're on your own, you're like, whatever. But now I'm like, no, this guy is really worth it. He's really good at what he does. And if I'm able to train him to learn kind of these smaller agreements, it means more time for me to kind of focus on either bringing in more clients or doing my volunteer work.
Okay. When you went from working and having the stability of working in a law firm to doing your own thing, how was that
I am so grateful for having been able to have built my client base, because when I left, I did take my clients with me, which is rare, but I had such a great relationship with my former boss, and they were all indie rock clients. So it was a different niche. So, the first couple years we really spent figuring out what it is, how I'm going to work, how do I work, and how big am I going to grow this? I was lucky enough to share an office for the first year. In 2014, I took on that job teaching at Cal State, LA.
Oh yeah, we haven't even...
And so I discovered even more that how much I love that aspect of, it's one thing to know it in your head, how to practice. It's another to explain it to another human being and get them to understand it. So that really helped boost my confidence in general. I had definitely come off of a law firm that came with its own reputation and constantly being invited to conferences, to being on my own and having to rebuild that. And I wasn't ready yet to put myself out there. So that was the first step. I was referred by a colleague, again, who couldn't do the time frame. So I came on board and filled in for him. So it was such a boost in confidence. It was really one of the kind of defining chapters where I never saw myself as being a teacher, and here I am, and you got to do it, and I got it done.
Yeah. What skills did you have to develop in order to manage your own law firm? If someone wants to manage and go out on their own and have their own practice, what would you tell them? You need to have this stuff together.
Right. Again, don't know how people hang their shingle right out of law school, because you don't learn this stuff in law school.
Phrase before.
Yeah, that's because I had started so early on in the law firm. I started as an intern, then was an admin assistant, then built my way to a lawyer. So I did all of the back end admin side. So I knew about malpractice. I knew about payroll. I knew about how to accommodate rent and that sort of stuff. That was what I was responsible. So that really came into play later on, understanding that. I knew I was really good. My responsibilities early on were also feeling out clients who call. And it's like, hey, I want to retain your services, and hearing, okay, this is what you need. Well, this is what we charge here. So I was very lucky that it had been ingrained in me so early on. So I knew how to bill. I knew how much time things take. And so it was easier when I went on my own.
Okay. On the flip side, is there something that you would consider a flat side? And a flat side is something that you have specifically chosen not to nurture, but you think that it would help you in your current job.
Well, yes. Which is why. So basically, I have no knowledge of like technical language. Like people will say Ruby and JavaScript, and I'm like, I know vaguely what it is or other things, but I have no idea what it is. So at the hackathons, that was definitely like, I'm like, wrong person to ask, but I will find you the person who can solve that. So I do want to learn more about that, like the technical language for dummies part of it. I've seen a lot of people have an engineering degree, a law degree, and a business degree. And I'm like, whoa, that is a lot of skill.
It is. So in a perfect, like fully actualized practice, how do you see yourself serving the tech community with your law expertise?
I definitely see it being more, my niche is being an affordable attorney that can provide you both business and legal advice. And I've been expanding my practice, like I said, more into the tech space, dealing with both software, firmware licensing, not just the traditional work, which I've been doing, which is employment agreements, work for hires, consulting, stuff like that. So I see myself kind of filling that circle completely with that knowledge.
Okay. So the next section I like to do is I call rapid fire. So I'm just going to ask you questions and then just tell me the first thing that pops into your mind. So when you need a boost of confidence, what do?
I go home to my family. There's nothing more than spending time with my niece, who's 8 and will be my boss one day, just to have
She's
fun.
already showing those signs.
And getting a home cooked meal. It means so much to me, and especially after having gone so hard in September, it's been nice to like go home in October.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of tech, what are 5 apps or services that you can't live without? If I told you can only have 5 apps,
can they be all 5 food delivery apps?
If that's what it will be, then that's what it will be.
I guess I definitely can't live without Facebook Messenger. It's one of my best friends and I talk a lot on that. Definitely Amazon Prime. Like if I was on a deserted island, I had my 5 apps. I keep track of, I use this app called Today to keep track of my habits.
Okay.
I'm a meditation app, definitely.
Which meditation app do you use?
Insight Timer.
Okay.
Yeah, I have I've been using that for years. And Instagram.
Okay. With your meditation, do you meditate in the morning or do you take meditation breaks during the day?
I meditate in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll do it kind of based on what I feel like waking up that morning. Like today, I did one that's called I am proud of all my efforts, and using that mantra throughout the day.
Okay. Oh, very cool. Is there something that you do every day or several times per week that helps you focus and produce your best work?
Besides meditation, I feel like I've been better about managing my schedule. Have recently decided to say no.
Okay. And
really take the time to reassess how this year has gone for me, what I've liked, and that's how I came to the conclusions of what makes me happy, and really see how to shape the future that way. I'm I love to volunteer and do a lot of things, but I think I've been more able to manage how involved I am in those.
Yeah. Same way. I remember there was one day I was walking around and I had the We Are LA Tech shirt on. And so then there were like two guys that were in the area, and they saw me like, "Oh, are you part of We Are LA Tech?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "What do you want to help out in our community?" And they were telling about their community, and it was really nothing I was interested in. But I was just like, "Yeah," because I love meeting people. My response, instead of being like, "Sure," they'd be like, "Well, why don't you tell me more about it, and then let me think about it." Like I need to. That needs to be my first response versus just like thinking about like, "Oh, well, I'll probably meet some people that I don't know, so that'll be cool." But then it's just like, you're not even interested in the topic.
Like I can't be like the engineering group. Like I'm like what am I like? We have zero things in common. I don't even know what literal language you speak.
Yes.
So yeah,
this is like a CTO forum. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah.
I want you to pick an odd number between 5 and 135.
3.
Okay. 5 and 135.
5 and 135?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh. 82.
Okay. Odd number.
Oh my gosh, why do I keep doing that? Odd numbers? There's only odd numbers in this list? And I've listened to like 3 of your podcasts too. 127.
127. Okay. So there's a book called Listography by Lisa Nola, and her book is designed where you can create your autobiography through list making. 127, the list you have to create is clubs and bars you frequented.
Oh my gosh. When I was younger, the Short Stop at the Echo, Spaceland.
I've heard of none of these.
These are all like music or bars in Echo Park or Silver Lake. So that was definitely my thing.
Yeah.
The Cha-Cha. Those were kind of like my haunts back in the day.
Where you found new talent.
Exactly.
Okay. So squad care, we talked a little bit about self-care before, but I like to talk about squad care. So who do you turn to when you need help? Like who's on your squad?
So I will always have my best friend from high school, Ann Yoon. She is, I feel like all my text messages, like the entire thing, it's always her. I will say that I'm so lucky that now, being at Cross Campus, I found even more like yourself and Mickey and Audrey and a bunch of other women who are here where it's just nice to have a laugh as we're walking through, which I know maybe we don't share as deep of things, but we're at least there to like have a laugh during the day as we're all like working hard on our stuff. Yeah. And then I have really great friend who I trained her to be a lawyer. So she's gone on her own as well.
Oh, very cool.
So I have a really tight group of friends that I still talk to and will karaoke.
So is there something that you geek out about that you're not embarrassed to admit that you love?
I let go of my embarrassment of watching trashy TV.
Ooh, what's your favorite trashy TV?
Anything on Bravo. Oh, and the entire Love and Hip Hop franchise.
Oh, gosh. I know the characters, but I haven't watched any of the shows, but I feel like I know who some of them are. Some of them I don't, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with liking trashy TV.
I had one friend because I used to get Us Weekly too, and she's like, "Why do you read that? You're in law school," or I don't even know how she said it. And I was like, "I spend all day solving people's problems. I want to just turn off my brain at one point."
One of my favorite podcasts is this podcast called Who Weekly, where people literally call, they'll be like, well, I saw this person like on Instagram. Who is this person? And so they take a lot of celebrities who aren't them. So like, they don't talk about like George Clooney or LeBron James. They'll talk about the who's of the entertainment industry. And it's so funny. They do a really good segment. Like one of their biggest who's is Rita Ora. So they have like a segment at the end of every episode that is talking about what is she doing. So it's
what is she doing?
So good. And I learned about so many people in entertainment that aren't like A-listers and like who these people are, why are they famous. They do a lot of funny things on like sponsor content, especially on Instagram, where people are, it's so painful and funny how they're like doing an ad for something like, I'm just here, like having a good time, having my yogurt, and it's like, this is so awful, but it's one of my favorite.
There's a new rise, well, obviously, like Instagram models, people just trying Instagram comedians. I love it. I can't wait to listen to it.
Yes, it is. Oh, it's so good. So who are some possibility models in your life? So this is women of color that inspire you and show you that it's possible to live your dreams.
I just finished reading Ellen Powell's book, Reset, and I consider her a possibility model because knowing how hard that lawsuit was, especially being a lawyer, I know exactly what it's like. So for her to keep going and still want to push that driving mission of diversity and inclusion, it's just, that gives me hope that I will find myself in that place one day as well.
Yeah. So if people want to find you online, where should they go?
They can find me on Twitter at Heidy V, HEIDYV, and on Facebook at Heidy Vaquerano.
Okay. And I will put that in the show notes. So, final question. The name of this podcast is How She Did It. If you could go back in time and give your younger self some career advice, what would you tell yourself?
Knowing how hiring and resumes and all that goes these days, I think I would have left a long time earlier than I did. I was just comfortable but again, I was still learning and like really getting my career set for that. But I could have gone somewhere else to get like a different variation of that education. So I would just have told younger Heidi, it's okay to go and figure other things out and like discover different ways of doing the same thing.
And that's the show. To hear my thoughts about the interview, as well as get links to the things that we discussed in this episode, go to nts.today/8.